Hi, my name is Rebecca Catino, and I'm here with Annette Catino, and we're talking about capital punishment.
Hi, Rebecca. It's great to be here with you.
Let's get started. So my first question is, given all we know about capital punishment, where would you put yourself in the argument of being for or against it?
I would say that I'm against capital punishment. And the main reason why I'm against capital punishment is because of my faith. I don't believe we have the right to kill.
The argument of whether or not the death penalty costs taxpayers more or less is still undecided. As a tax-paying citizen, where would you put yourself in that argument?
That's a great question. I never really thought about it from the perspective of how much money is spent on executing people. I'm certain that we could find better uses for our money than capital punishment.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, the cost to house someone on death row, in most cases, that's for many, many years before they're even executed. In that space of time, the amount of money that's spent, I'm sure it could be used on reform or even not even in the prison system at all. It could be used on education, health care, or if it has to be allocated to the prison system, a better use would be to reform an inmate or to help the families who have had the crime done against them, or even the families of the person who's going to be executed.
So in what ways would you think it would be ideal to help reform someone who's on death row?
That's an interesting question, because I think probably the best use of money for someone who's waiting for years and years and years to be executed is to actually make sure that they are guilty. And so if money could be allocated towards confirming the outcome of the trial, maybe using DNA or something, I think that would be a better use than just having someone sit there. We're housing them, we're feeding them, and that can go on for years, which can drive up the cost.
So something that's a flaw in our justice system is that far too often those who are innocent are being executed. How do you think the justice system can fix that flaw?
Well, I think not only are the innocent wrongly executed, I think the poor, I think it's more people who don't have money. They don't have the resource for a great defense, a good lawyer, multiple appeals. So I think if we really looked at the research, and I don't have any hard facts, but I think if we looked at the research, we'd see not only are the innocent executed more, but those who are poor are executed probably more than someone who can afford a great defense. I think about an O.J. Simpson who had a huge amount of money at his disposal. I think we could kind of even that system out, which justice is supposed to be blind. It's supposed to be, it shouldn't take into factors of poverty, but I think a way that we can really make sure that people are guilty, if it's going to be the law of the land to execute the guilty, is to, spend some dollars or allocate some dollars around DNA. DNA is what is showing that we just executed or innocent person. So if we use DNA to prove innocence or guilt up front, I think that would be a great way to reform the system.
So keeping in mind that New York State, it's illegal to have the death penalty, but other states, in about 32 states, it's legal. In about 18 states, it's not. Why do you think there's division within our country?
I think that's the beauty of this republic. So it's great that the right or the law to execute or to implement the death penalty really relies on the states. It's really good that the federal government is not the decision maker there. The government should not be deciding the laws of the state. So I'm in total agreement that the state should have the right. And why there's division is just we're all individuals, we're different people, we feel differently about this serious issue. And I think that's why you have some states who are for it, some states who are against it. That's the beauty of the republic that we live in the United States of America.
Oftentimes, someone who kills a public servant, like a police officer, or to that extent, is given the death penalty. But someone who kills an ordinary person is given the death penalty as well, but there's sort of division with that. Why would you think that one life is greater and more valuable than the other?
Well, I personally don't think one life is more valuable than the other. I think all life is valuable because we're all created in God's image. We're not all God's children, but we all are His creation, and we all bear His image. And so every life is valuable, whether you're a public servant or not. And so I think part of why I'm against the death penalty is because it's not fair across the board. It's not always implemented for the ordinary citizen, just like the police officer. So I think that's one of the main reasons for me why I think that the death penalty is not, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fairly administered.
So with that, if it's not fairly administered, there is still another flaw that it's kind of discrimination. A lot of times African Americans or people of color and minorities are executed more. How should we fix that? Because that's a major flaw.
That's a major flaw, and I think that's really tied to poverty. I think that's really tied to income levels. So I think it's a combination of minorities and the income and the socioeconomic status of that person. Again, typically minorities don't have the resources to mount a major defense, get a great lawyers on their side. It's mainly because they don't have the money. I think money is probably the biggest issue in the way the death penalty is administered and why it's unfair.
So my last question would be, given the legal opportunity, whether you are a lawyer, a justice, a president, given the legal opportunity, how would you reform the death penalty, or would you just remove it as a whole?
That is a complicated question. I think it's the entire justice system that needs reform. If you look at the laws where there's, in our country right now, mass incarceration. If you look at the stats, I think in the whole world we have more incarcerated people than any country in the world. So I think it's not just the death penalty that needs reform. I think the entire justice system needs reform. And again, the justice system is a business. Running a prison is big business. Housing prisoners is big business. And so I think there's major reform that's needed. And I wouldn't remove the right from states to decide whether or not they want to have that as something that is legal in their state. But I think not just the death penalty do we need to look at. We need to look at our entire justice system.
Annette, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.